I've recently housed straight up criminals. Drugs and paraphernalia on all countertops. This individual had left a woman who was passed out on the couch from being overdosed on those drugs, and the police had to come and arrest that individual. What's up, you guys? Tyler Huxford here, and for today's video, I'm going to be highlighting my absolute worst month on the Airbnb platform. It's about time that I did that. So I'm bringing this video to you in the middle of the Airbnb bust, which for anybody out there who is already a short-term rental host, you know began in 2022 and it continues to intensify here at the tail end of 2023. And while the Airbnb stock is up 17% since the beginning of the year, currently today, and 44% year over year from exactly today a year ago, there are rumblings and more than whispers going on out there about Airbnb. So I'm here to share my personal experience as an Airbnb host in 2023 during the Airbnb bust, during the worst month I have ever experienced on the platform. So if you have been in the short-term rental game since 2020, you know that it's been an absolute wild ride since March of 2020, where we went from not being able to host at all to the tail end of 2020 and all of 2021, where short-term renting was an incredible money-making experience, back to 2022, where things were starting to correct just based off of people returning back to work and not making quite as much income, to now 2023, where there are absolute economic factors, city laws and ordinances, and Airbnb platform factors that are driving a very strong correction now. So let's talk about my earnings in our worst month for one particular Airbnb unit which we have. So I'm going to be using a location that we have in Salt Lake County for that, and then we'll talk about what else I'm noticing as far as trends are going in the Airbnb space. And this is for anybody out there, by the way, who is either considering investing in a short-term rental or maybe who already has a short-term rental and is wondering, like me, how to best survive this crisis. So we're going to look at some data here. I'm going to go to the glasses here, as well as the iPad. So if you've subscribed to the channel, which you should, by the way, make sure you like and subscribe. You know I enjoy transparency, things like snapshots, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. So right here is my November calendar. So for November, you can see that we have very low occupancy numbers for the month. This particular Airbnb I'm highlighting averages 86% occupancy month over month during the year. We are currently sitting, let me check this, yikes, at 39% occupancy. Now this is taking into account everything that remains unbooked here halfway through the month. And we actually do experience quite a bit of same day and especially same week bookings, so I absolutely expect this to pick up. But what I am seeing here is we have already had 6 nights go unbooked at this particular unit which we host from. And I think prior to this month, we only had 1 month where the whole month went by with only 5 days not being booked. That was our worst month. And this is already our worst month halfway through the month. And you can also see that we have really lowered prices to stay competitive in our market. So we have gone from an average of an $84 nightly rate to a $44 average nightly rate, and even down to $34 some nights to be able to capture same day stays some days. So far halfway through the month, we're looking at a total earned of $1,362 with $440 of expenses going towards cleaning costs and an extra $150 on top of that to replace supplies and amenities, which I will go over here in just a little bit. So what are the biggest things that I'm learning from this? Well, of all of these statistics, the amount of 44-day stays which went unbooked in our listing was what absolutely made me curious what else was going on in the Salt Lake City market. So I took a look, and for the first time ever, what I am seeing a significant drop in the nightly rate stays on the Airbnb platform, which if you're a guest is outstanding, but again, if you're an investor and a host, is terrifying. So of the over 3,300 units of short-term rentals located in the Salt Lake City area, the average nightly stay typically is $199. That average has now been cut in half, folks. The average nightly stay in Salt Lake City is now $99, and it's been brought down by what a lot of the major property management groups in Salt Lake City are doing. And this was the first thing that I noticed. As I was looking across the competition in Salt Lake to see how everyone else was adjusting either their rates or the amenities they offered in the area, I noticed that many of the 3,300 nightly rental units located in the Salt Lake City area are in fact owned by very large property management groups. And those property management groups have chosen to lower their prices as low as $44 a night and even $34 a night to stay competitive in our area. What this has done is this has absolutely driven out many of the investors and hosts out there who perhaps own 1 or 2 units of short-term rentals in Salt Lake City out of the market, as they are not able to compete at that price point for 2 and 3 bedroom stays. I'm actually very impressed with the quality of these apartments that these property management groups are listing. They are definitely worth more than $34 to $44 a night, but with everything going on in the market, with the amount of folks not taking trips anymore, with the amount of folks being laid off and not having disposable income to spend on things like stays and vacations, we've absolutely been hit with that in our market here in Utah. And while the major property management groups who have loads of funds can compete that way, a lot of other investors cannot. We are fortunate in our space where our space is an ADU, which we paid cash for. It does not have a mortgage, and there really aren't that many expenses to maintain our property, so we've been able to compete. But at $44 a night, we are now competing with properties that were several levels above what we offered in our tiny 220 square foot space. And now we're competing with 2 bedroom and 3 bedroom stays at a price point that is just unsustainable. Item number 2 that I'm noticing is probably the most important factor going on here, which is the clientele, the Airbnb guests which are staying in our apartment, has completely changed. So back when Airbnb used to be new, I think a lot of people who use the Airbnb platform used to be much higher quality in terms of communication and just overall respect for the property. What I'm now noticing with guests staying at our property is the rise of the place being left a mess, guests breaking rules, doing things like showing up with more guests than they said they would, or perhaps smoking, and even guests leaving with our things. That's right, theft. So in the last month, we have had an Apple TV remote stolen. We have had half of our laundry detergent pods stolen. We have had shampoos, conditioners, soaps, and lotions stolen. And I'm a ginger, folks. A ginger without his lotion is nothing. And even our hair dryer was stolen. You know how I found out about that? I had a dude with the most luscious locks you've ever seen reach out to me and say that he had just taken a shower and was now unable to dry his hair when it was 38 degrees outside. That beautiful individual with luscious locks had to proceed to walk to his meetings and appointments in Salt Lake City in 38-degree weather with a wet lion's mane. He was devastated, I was devastated, and I'm sure his clients were devastated, frankly, by his luscious locks. I mean, he just had great hair. But in all seriousness, very disappointing that that's happened, and I've had to reach out to Airbnb for things like Airbnb cover far more often than I've ever had to. And part of that reason is now that Airbnb has been around long enough, there are enough guests out there who know how to take advantage of the system. People are starting to do those bad habits that they used to only do in hotels, things like taking the lotions, the shampoos, and the conditioners, you know, things you really shouldn't do. But now you're doing it in host homes with full-size bottles of supplies that then the next guest won't have at all. On top of that, I've recently housed straight-up criminals. So story time here, folks. Buckle in. So recently I had a gentleman reach out to request that he stay same day in our local 220 square foot studio. Now, there was already a red flag because this individual did not have a first name in his profile listing. Instead, his first name was just a single letter. Usually that's a bad sign. And I won't say what letter of the alphabet it was, but he proceeded to request if he'd be able to stay in our property and bring one guest with him. To which I said he could absolutely stay. He also proceeded to warn me that his profile did have one particular naughty review on it, just because he had given shelter to a friend who was a smoker, and that set the host off. And he apologized to me for that, and he explained to me that he would not make that mistake again. And I trusted him. So I let this individual stay at my property, and right away I began to regret my decision. So I could tell through our door camera that this individual had brought far more than one guest. He had brought 4 other guests with him, so a total of 5 adults staying in my 220 square foot studio. You know, that's not cool. And this individual also did not check out on time the next day, and we have a very tight window to get the place cleaned in between checkout and check in the following day. But my cleaner Janena is a rock star. She was able to get things done, things set for the next guest. So fast forward about 4 days later, this individual is reaching out to me again, requesting that they stay in my property. Once again reminding me that he has a poor review as part of his profile from hosts, but that the reviews were not his fault. This time he proceeded to tell me a story about how somebody had actually hacked into his Airbnb account and had booked a bunch of faulty stays in other locations. Since this story did not match the previous story, I decided to look into this just a little bit further and read some of these reviews, to which I was shocked. So the reason that this individual was now reaching out so suddenly for a same-day stay is because his previous stay, which I will remind you is the stay that he made right after my stay, that host reported the following. That host reported this individual had left drugs and paraphernalia on all countertops in the kitchen. There were needles, there were powders on every single one of the countertops. This individual had brought 4 additional adults to stay at the property when the property only allowed for 2, very similar to mine. And after checkout, this individual had left a woman who was passed out on the couch from being overdosed on those drugs, and the police had to come and arrest that individual. The stay before my stay, the host had complained that this individual had in fact stolen their Amazon packages and that they had to negotiate to get their Amazon packages back. Isn't that unbelievable? And the guest before that had actually reported that this guest had actually cut the wires on their hard-wired doorbell cam so that they wouldn't be able to see who they were bringing in to the studio. And you have to understand, I'm reading these reviews with the understanding that some of these things took place just before they came to my studio. And one of these reviews, the one with the drugs being left on the countertops and an individual being passed out on the couch, had happened just after my stay. And now this individual is attempting to flee with 3 of these guests and take refuge in my studio. And as I'm reading this, I realize I had not changed the door code from this individual's stay at my studio. So I sprinted to Salt Lake City to change the door code and ensure that this individual would not be able to enter our studio. And then of course I reached out to Airbnb, and this individual has been blocked from my profile. Now, I've been a superhost on the Airbnb platform for a long time, and I've hosted to over 250 people at this point in my career. I have never experienced anything like that, but I'm experiencing more guests like that now, and I believe it's because more and more people have adopted the Airbnb platform for hospitality on travel, and again, many of the clientele are taking advantage of the system, of the platform, and unfortunately, good hosts with good intentions. Another thing that I'm noticing here, specifically in Salt Lake City, but also if you look at the statistics around the country, more and more cities are cracking down on city codes and law enforcement in regards to short-term housing. Now, bigger picture, what's going on in the economy, there just isn't enough housing for people who need long-term rental housing, which means that in cities like Salt Lake City, where we're especially suffering from that sort of thing, cities are requiring the investors in the city to convert their short-term rentals back into long-term rentals in order to provide enough housing for city residents. Now, in all honesty, I am very much in favor of that. Everything that we own in Salt Lake City is a long-term rental, and I believe that that's the way it should be. While the earnings historically have been very healthy when it comes to short-term renting, I think it's more important that we cater to the individuals and the people in our communities, and there just needs to be more housing. But more and more cities are cracking down on the amount of short-term rentals in their cities, and those short-term listings are being forced to convert to long-term listings. Airbnb as a company is spending a lot of money going to war with these cities and their councils trying to get this resolved. But the bottom line is there's a lot of people out there who depend on the money that is coming in from a platform like Airbnb, without taking into consideration that on the Airbnb platform, hosts are not the customers, guests are the customers. Airbnb doesn't make any revenue from us. They make revenue from the guest making the stay, which means as investors, we are the product, folks. Our homes are the product. Airbnb uses our product to cater to their customers who are the guests. And this gives the guests a lot of power. And that's the last thing I want to talk about here, is that with all of this going on and nightly rates absolutely plummeting, expectations of customers continues to climb. I am amazed when I charge $44 for a nightly stay, what the customer expects in terms of amenities and just being catered to personally and emotionally. I've had over 98 5-star reviews based off of 107 reviews overall. I've been a superhost for a very long time, but I've recently received several 3-star reviews and a 1-star review in 2 months' time. And basically what it came down to was customer expectations not being met on same day $44 stays. And what's unfortunate is, as a host, when there's a host-guest dispute, the customer in Airbnb's eyes really is the guest, and so this gives the guest a lot of power as far as what they can leverage and ask for from Airbnb and our hosts. Because if we don't comply, Airbnb cares a little bit more about the customer who paid the stay fee than they do the host who just provides the product. Now, does this mean I'm going to step back and quit from Airbnb? I've seen some YouTubers do that, by the way, which I think is totally interesting, that they're starting their own short-term rental business without the assistance of Airbnb at all. That's interesting. I personally love the Airbnb platform. I believe in the Airbnb platform, and I even love the support that the Airbnb platform provides to its hosts. So thank you, Airbnb. But there are absolutely factors out there outside of the control or scope of the Airbnb platform, everything going on in the economy, with guests, and with city laws and ordinances, which are making it very difficult to be a host in this crazy market. So I provide this again as a warning, not necessarily advice, but a warning to anyone who's considering investing in Airbnb or getting into the short-term rental game right now in the tail end of 2023. That's all for today's video, folks. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. We're doing a giveaway here since this is a brand new channel. We're at 100 subscribers. We're going to be drawing names for anybody who has subscribed to the channel and has commented in any of the videos here for Hux, spelled H-U-X, like Huxford. If you do that, then you'll be entered into the drawing, and at 100 subscribers, we will draw names who have made those comments and are subscribed for a $100 Amazon gift card. So folks, make sure you're subscribed, comment you're here for Hux. Tune in next time, folks, and safe investing out there.